Masechet Baba Batra Daf Lamed He. Today we're going to see a bunch of interesting cases that are difficult to decide. There is not sufficient evidence to this guy or to the other litigant for the court to make an actual decision, and so they have different ways of making some kind of compromise. We're going to compare different cases of this type and figure out how come sometimes we make a compromise of split it. The two split it down the middle. And sometimes we say it's at the discretion of the judges to do whatever they want. And sometimes we say whoever is stronger prevails. These are all cases of doubt where there's no absolute proof. And yet the court uses different strategies in order to make some decision when it's not possible for them to make an absolute correct decision because there are no witnesses, there's no absolute proof. So here's case number one. Ze omer shel avotai v'ze omer shel avotai. Amar Rav Nachman, kol de'alim gevar. Two people come into court and they're disputing some property. Could be anything. An item, land. This one says, this is mine because I inherited it from my fathers. It was my father's and I inherited it. The other one says, no, it belonged to my ancestors and I have it because I inherited it. But neither of them have witnesses that it belonged to their fathers. They have no proof. So what is the court left to do? Rav Nachman says, whoever is stronger prevails. There are many ways to interpret this. Could be that means that they come and bring proofs and argue. That's a nice interpretation if you don't want to have violence, that the court is authorizing them to have violence. But a simple reading sounds like, yeah, they have some kind of wrestling match and decide who it is. Now, does that mean that the court is presiding over this wrestling match and deciding who wins? I think probably not. I think basically what the court is saying is, listen, we have nothing to go by. You have no valid arguments, and therefore we can't decide in a legal way. So we are removing ourselves from the case and leave it to the Wild West. Right? What would happen if there was no court? So someone would grab it. If it was a boat, one guy would throw the other guy off the boat, and then that would be his. One guy would be stronger in taking this land and making sure the other guy kicking the other guy off the land, or they're pulling on something, and one guy pulls it. So go have an arm wrestle, have a boxing match, and that will decide it once and for all. Doesn't mean that every day they're going to keep grabbing it from each other, but they do something. Now, is this necessarily fair? Well, you can argue that maybe it's fair because the person who is the rightful owner probably will fight harder, because this is a serious thing. Someone try to take something that's yours, right? You're invested in that item, even if it's not worth so much money. You're like, this is mine. You're not going to let people take it, and so he probably will put more effort into getting it than a thief would. A thief would rather get an easier victim they could go steal from without having to fight so hard. So in general, hopefully the rightful owner will win. But basically, whether or not it does, the court has nothing to go by. So it throws up its hands and says, right, let the law of the jungle prevail. Okay, so there's many ways of understanding it, but that seems to be the basic idea of Rav Nachman. If there's insufficient proof, the Bet Din removes itself and they fight it out themselves. Now here's the first question. Now how is this case of these two people who say it's my father's, where Rav Nachman says whoever stronger prevails, how come it's a different verdict than the case of two deeds of sale that have the same date? Right, some guy owns some piece of land and he sells it to two people. And the idea is that you can't sell the same land to two people. It's not a partnership. He said he sold the whole land to this guy, and the other deed says he sold the whole land to other guy. So who's the rightful owner? Well, whoever he sold it to first is the rightful owner. The problem is they both have the same date. They didn't used to write time on it in the morning or afternoon, so we don't know what time of day it is. There's a couple of ways of interpreting this case also. It could be that whoever is earlier in the day would get it, but they have no proof. They went and they asked the witnesses, they tracked them down, they verified the deeds, they're valid deeds, but the witnesses don't know, don't remember, or can't tell which one was first and which one was second. And so therefore the Beit Din does not know who sold it first. It could also be there is an opinion, this is the way that Ashbam explains it, that when there's no time on the shtar, then it takes effect at the end of the day. Kind of like when you buy a stock and you say, I want the price at closing. So it doesn't matter if you ask them to buy in the morning or in the afternoon, you're going to get the closing price either way. And so in both of these cases, it doesn't matter when they sign the document. It only matters when the day ends. That's when the sale actually transfers. So therefore, there is no way to tell which one's first and which one's second because they kind of come in simultaneously. Okay, either way, the point is that we have a document, two documents that are conflicting, and we don't know which represents the true intention of the seller or which one really came first earlier in the day. And so, in this case, we do not say, go fight it out. Instead, there's a machloket. Rav says, let them split it down the middle. You take half and you take half. They could take literally half the field, or if it's a house or something, sell the house and split the proceeds. Shemuel, however, disagrees, and he says discretion of the judges. Let's see. This guy, let's say he gave it as a gift. Well, who does he like better? So we use our discretion, our experience, our knowledge of the people involved, of the situation, to figure out, it's more likely that he gave it as a gift to that person and not the other guy. And he gave it to this guy first, the other guy gave it to second, knowing that he already gave it to the first one and didn't really mean it. And so, discretion of the judges, they can give it all to one guy, all to the other guy. They can split, they can do whatever they want. So, these are different, Rav and Shemuel, but neither of them say, Kol Dalim Gavad, that let them fight it out. So what's the difference fundamentally between these cases? In all of them, we don't have sufficient proof. The answer is Hatam leka lemekam ala de milata. Hacha ika lemekam ala de milata. In the case of two shetarot, there's no way to clarify the matter even in the future. If you follow Rashbam that says they both take effect at the end of the day, so then there's really no way to ever clarify it because fundamentally it doesn't even matter if you know which one's first and which one's second. They both come into effect at the end of the day, and then we have to psychoanalyze the guy, which one he meant. He meant to give it to this one or that one. And according to, I think, the simpler reading, that it does matter which one came first during the day, but the problem here is that we already ratified the deeds, we already spoke to the witnesses, and they don't have enough information. They don't remember what time of the day it was, or they remember around when it was, but it's not exact enough to know if he sold it to this guy first or that guy first. So we already went through the process, and we don't know the answer, and there is no new information coming. We already tracked down all the paths. We know who the witnesses are, and they don't have any idea. Because we're never going to be able to find out what it is. Therefore, the Beit Din says, okay, you know what? We'll split it, or discretion of the judges, and they give a verdict. They make a decision, and then that's it. The case is closed. This is different from our case of Zeomer Shelavotai. Here, each one came with a claim, it belonged to my ancestors, but they came with no proof. Here, it's very possible that one of them or the other may come in the future with witnesses, right? He'll find some old timer who says, oh yeah, I remember this was your father's. I remember he had it and he lived on that property. And since in the future, it's somewhat likely that one of them will have proof. Therefore, the Beit Din doesn't want to get involved. They don't want to come and give a verdict and say, okay, split it half. And then one guy will come with a proof, and then they'll have to go back. So what are they basing it on, right? They don't know, and they don't know what information is going to come in the future. So they say, listen, go try to find proof, and then come back, and then you'll know, right? In the meantime, whoever grabs it will take it. Even if someone grabs it now, and then the other guy brings a proof, they bring witnesses, then, okay, we'll remove it from the grabber, and we'll give it to the guy who had witnesses. So it's fine. The Beit Din just doesn't want to get involved, since there may be information out there, there may be witnesses and proof out there, so they are not going to do anything until that information comes. In the meantime, whoever is stronger prevails. Okay, so this makes a lot of sense. But now we bring yet another case. Umay shana mehaditnan. Hamachalif para b'chamor v'yalda. V'chen hamocher shifchato v'yalda. Ze omer ad shelo macharti yalda. V'ze omer mi shelakachti yalda. Yachloku. Is a Mishnah in Baba Metziah. if we are doing a chalipin, we're exchanging, doing barter. We're exchanging a cow for a donkey. The cow is not around here. The cow is on somewhere else in some third-party property. Doesn't belong to any of us. It's just out in the middle of nowhere. What we do have in front of us is the donkey. So let's say I'm acquiring the donkey. So I pull the donkey. When I pull the donkey, I get the donkey. And automatically, this is how it works, you automatically get the cow. Even though you're not pulling on the cow, when we do a barter, once one side pulls on, acquires with one item, the other side automatically at that moment acquires the other item. So let's say we do this transaction at noon. I pull on the donkey at noon, you get the cow at noon. Here's the complication. That cow was pregnant. And now it gave birth on that very day, but we don't know if it was before noon or after noon. So if it was before noon, so that means this was my cow originally, right? I'm pulling on your donkey, I'm giving you my cow. So if it gave birth before noon, then the offspring belongs to me. I keep the offspring. I only sold you the cow. So you get the cow and I keep the offspring. However, if it gave birth after noon, well then you acquired the cow while it was pregnant, and then it gave birth under your ownership, which means that you keep the offspring. So this makes a big difference. The thing is that we don't know exactly when it gave birth. And so we come into court and I say, no, I think it gave birth before the transaction, so I'm keeping it. And you say, no, when I took it, that's when it gave, after the transaction, that's when it gave birth. That could be a cow. The same case would be if I'm selling to you a maidservant who was pregnant. And so we do the transaction without the maidservant present, and it turns out she gave birth at some time during the day. So if she gave birth before the transaction, then the seller would keep the baby, whereas if she gave birth after the transaction, then the buyer keeps the baby, and so we don't know what to do, and therefore the Mishnah says we split it evenly, right? We'll take that offspring, sell it, and sell and split the money. So in this case, this would seem to be a case where you can figure out there is information out there. Right now, we don't know whether it gave birth before or after, but there may be a witness that says, oh yeah, I was there. I saw that animal giving birth, and I saw that it gave birth in the morning. And then we'll know, okay, so therefore it belongs to the seller or the original owner of the cow. So in this case, there is information out there that would be helpful, and that proof may come in the future. And based on what you just said, whenever there is information coming that will come in, so you should do whoever is stronger prevails. And yet the Mishnah does not do that. The Mishnah says we split it. So what's the difference? And the answer is Hatam lehai it le derara de mamona ulahu it le derara de mamona hacha I demor lo demor I demor la demor. The answer is that here in the Mishnah about switching a cow with a donkey, we each have what's called dirara de mamona. We each have a financial connection to the cow. And we each have a valid claim to say that the offspring is mine or yours. How so? Well, this cow definitely belonged to me in the morning. I have a chazakah that the cow is mine, and therefore I have a valid claim that the offspring is probably also mine. I have a chazakah that belonged to me. And you come in and you say, well, I am definitely now the current owner of the cow, because we all agree that, right, you bought the cow and you have it now, you exchanged it, and you're the owner of the cow, and therefore it makes sense that the offspring may very well likely be yours. In fact, the two of us may not even know exactly what time it gave birth, and so I'm saying, well, maybe it's mine, you're saying maybe it's yours. So we both have a valid connection to the item, and could be mine, could be yours, and that's why the Mishnah says to split it in that case. That makes the most sense. Even though information may come in the future, but still, the court's not going to just give up and say, go fight it over. It doesn't make sense for the court to say to fight it over, because we have real claims that you can submit in court. This was mine. Everybody agrees it was mine. Therefore, the offspring is mine. You say, it's mine now. I acquired it. It makes sense that it's mine. So it's because we each have a real financial involvement in it and a valid legal claim, so the court will get involved. We're not sure which one it is, and so that's why the Mishnah says to split it. That is different from our case, when the two people said, it was my father's, no, it was my father's, and we have no proof at all. In that case, it's either mine or the other guy's. It's either it belongs to this guy 100% and the other guy has no claim, or it belongs to this guy and the other guy has no claim. If it's belonged to my ancestors and I inherited it, then it's only mine. I'm the only one that has a claim. Your claim is just totally false. You have no legal claim to it. And vice versa. In that case, the court says, listen, we have nothing to go by. And it doesn't make sense to split it because either it's yours or it's totally yours. There's no in between. And you don't, one of you has a financial connection. The other has no claim at all. You're just making up a whole story. In that case, the court says, we have nothing to go by, and you have to go and fight it out. אמרי נהר דעה, אם בא אחד מן השוק וחזיק בה, אין מוסין אותה מידו. דתנא רבי חייא, גזלן של רבים, לאו שמא גזלן. The sages in Nehar Da'ah say that, let's say you have these two guys, and they each one says, it's my father's, other says, my father's, and I inherited it, but they have no proof. And this item is out there in the middle of nowhere. If a third person who has no claim to it at all, he's just some random guy, he sees them fighting about it, and he comes and grabs it, right? Someone from the marketplace just goes and takes the item. We don't remove it from him. Now, he doesn't even have a claim, so it's like definitely not his. But so why don't we take it away out of his hands? Because of what Rabbi Chia taught in a Braita, that someone who steals from the public is not called a robber. They are a robber. They violated stealing, but you can't get it back from them because there is no one to claim ownership. In order to remove money from a robber, you need a plaintiff. Right? This is a civil case. And so if it's a public item, who is the plaintiff? Right? There is no one. So although he should not steal it, he's not allowed to steal it, he violates stealing, but he's not called a thief in the sense that he can't, who's he going to return it to? Who's going to be the plaintiff? And here also, because you have two people that are fighting over it, each one says their claim, but neither of them has proof, so neither of them can even prove that it belongs to them. So if one guy tries to sue the robber and say, hey, that guy stole from my property, the robber says, okay, first prove that it's your property. He doesn't have any proof, and therefore, doesn't mean that someone is allowed to come and take it. They're not allowed to do so, but if they do go and grab it, the court will not get involved to take it out of their hands because there is no legally proven plaintiff. Rav Asher Amar Leolam Shemeh Gazlan. Umay la Shemeh Gazlan Shelo Nitan Lehishabon. Rav Asher explains the Braita that it doesn't mean he's not a thief. He is a thief. So he is called a thief. So why does the Braita say he's not called a thief? Because it's not subject to be returned. In fact, it's a problem for the robber if he wants to make teshuvah. Who's he going to return it to? Oh, I stole this item, and now you have these two people there that are fighting over it, and neither of them is confirmed to be the owner. So is he going to return to this guy or return to that guy? Neither of them is necessarily the owner. Maybe neither of them are the owner. And so he stole something, and he doesn't have the possibility of even returning it to the rightful owner. And that's what the Braita means when it says that he is not called a robber, because he's not like a regular robber who otherwise would be able to return what he stole. And now back to the Mishnah, Ches Katan Shalosh Shanim Miyom LeYom. In order to achieve a chazakah, one has to be on the field for 3 years from day to day, right? Precisely 36 months, and so on. Amar Rabbi Abba, Idale le ihu gufe sana de pere la'altar have chazakah. Rabbi Abba says there is a way to achieve a chazakah, a presumption of ownership, immediately. How so? If the prior owner carries a basket of fruit on behalf of the squatter. For example, let's say the squatter is producing some dates and he harvested some dates, and the previous owner comes and buys some dates from the squatter. Well, he wouldn't do that if the squatter was actually a squatter and not the rightful owner. So going there and lifting up a basket of dates from the squatter shows that the previous owner admits that this guy is a true owner, and that will create a chazakah, a presumption of ownership immediately. He can come to court and say, it's mine. Look, see this guy, the previous owner came and he bought a basket of fruit from me and he picked it up and took it away from my field. Otherwise, he would have been yelling at me, hey, get off my field. So that you can make a chazakah in one day. Amar Rav Zavid. V'im ta'an ve'amar leperot hadativ ne'eman. Rav Zavid says there's an exception though, because if the previous owner says, oh, I let him come and harvest for a certain amount of time, right? He's a sharecropper. I own the field. I told him, listen, you can buy the harvest, right? You'll pay me a certain amount, and you take the harvest for this year or for these few years, however long. Well, in that case, the prior owner is believed and says, yeah, I did go there and I bought a basket of fruit because I sold him the harvest and then I picked up the fruit. That doesn't mean I admitted that the land is his. So that's Rav Zvi's. That's Rav Zvi's exception. Now we have an exception to that exception. When the previous owner can say, I only sold him the crops for this year or 2 years. You can only do that within 2 years. However, after the third year, once the previous owner says, oh, this is my land, I just let him stay here, and the guy who's on the land says, no, I have a chazakah, in that case, we believe the person who has the chazakah, who is on the land, the possessor of the land, the squatter, and we do not believe the previous owner to say that I only let him take the harvest, but it's not his. Why? Because 3 years makes a chazakah. So here's the summary. If the prior owner comes and lifts a basket of fruit and doesn't say anything, then creates a chazakah for the current squatter. However, if it's within 3 years and the previous owner says, oh no, this is not his. It's mine. I let him stay here and consume the produce for this 1 year or this 2 years. Then we believe the previous owner and we give the land back to the previous owner. But if the current squatter has it for 3 years, then that's it. The previous owner loses that claim because that's it. It's 3 years is the chazakah, and the previous owner no longer can say anything. Right? If he wanted to protest, he needed to protest within the first 3 years. Amar leRav Asher leRav Kahana, ilepera achteh mai hava le'me'evad. Now Rav Asher asked Rav Kahana a simple question. Let's say the owner gives the right to harvest the land to this sharecropper slash squatter slash possessor, and let's say they make a deal for 5 years, right? So then what's the previous owner to do? How could you ever make a deal where I say you can consume the harvest for 5 years? You could be the sharecropper for 5 years, and then after 3 years, automatically the sharecropper can say, oh, it's mine, and then he just steal the land from you. So what are we supposed to do in such a case? Rav Ashi asked this question to Rav Kana, and Rav Kana answered, the real owner, the owner of the land, must protest. Sometime within the first 3 years, he has to go and say, listen, court, this is my land. I let him use it for 5 years, and now 2 years are up. I just want you to know this is my land, and he has no right to keep it. It's not his. You have to establish that in court, give the protest, and that way, if the sharecropper is the true owner and he really bought it, then he'll hold on to his deed. And if he's not, then he's not, and the previous owner will be able to take the land back once the sharecropping agreement is finished. And we have an added proof to this fact. Di'ila temahachi. Hai mashkanta desura dechata behu b'mishlam shenaya ilen tepukar ada bela kesaf. יקביש לשטר משכנתה גבה ואמר לקוחה היא בידי הכינה מדמהמן מתקנה רבנן מידי דעתה בלידי פסדה Because if you don't say that a protest by the original owner is necessary and sufficient within the first 3 years for him to keep ownership, if you don't say that, then how could we have this mortgage that is practiced in Surah? This is a mortgage where, let's say you owe me $10,000. So I take your land, I put a mortgage on your land, and I take the land and I consume its produce, and let's say it produces $1,000 a year. So I will consume the produce for 10 years, and then at the end the land will be paid off. So that's called mashkanta de surah, and we write in a document that I hold on to that document, and it says at the end of these certain years, 10 years, the land will go back to you without money, right? That the loan will be fully paid off by that time. So now I hold on to the deed to show that, listen, I have a right to consume it for the next 10 years, right? And then I'll give it back. That's why I'm holding on to it, to make sure that you don't take it away from me. But let's say I hide the document, and then I say after 3 years, oh, I bought it from you, and I have a chazakah. So then what? You're going to believe me? So how could we ever make a mashkanta de surah? Would the rabbis make an ordinance that would cause someone a loss? You're going to set up people for failure because I'm going to have this right to consume your land for 10 years and have a document. I hide the document. I say, oh, it's mine, and then you'll have no legal claim to keep your land. Well, it's wrong to do that. Obviously, it's stealing, but I will win in court. So you're going to encourage a lot of people to cause a loss to someone else, and then the court won't have anything to do. The real rightful owner won't be able to get it back. So it doesn't make sense that the rabbis would set up a system that would be so easily abused. Rather, in that case of the mashkanta de surah, the owner, who is the borrower, has to come to court and say, listen, court, this is my land. This guy, I let him consume it for 10 years. That's why he has it, but I want you to register in court that this is mine, and that way, once it's registered in court, I won't be able to claim that I have a chazakah. And just like we say that there, we have to say the same thing here, that anytime there's some kind of sharecropping agreement that's more than 3 years, the owner has to make a declaration in court that it's theirs, and that way the sharecropper will not be able to make an illegal claim of a chazakah. Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen ve'amen.